Oh, Canada, our home and native land, through great love, in all of us command, with glowing hearts we see, rise the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, old Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land. Lord,
So this is okay.
Can you hear us through Zoom?
We could just hear that, Heather.
Okay, so you can hear me now?
Yes, I can. Are you using the room microphone or laptop microphone?
My room microphone.
Perfect.
We'll continue. Thank you very much. Councillor Bourdignon.
Present.
Councillor Robinson.
Present.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Present.
Thank you. We have all members in attendance with the exception of Councillor Carlton. Councillors Bourdignon, Robinson, and Hutchinson are participating virtually.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Okay, we're going to go on to item number 4, the land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the Six Nations of the Grand River, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, Wyandot, Wyandot peoples, on whose traditional territories we gather and whose ancestors, the Métis and the Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all of its diverse peoples. Okay, item number 5, is there any declaration of interest, pecuniary or otherwise? Seeing none, I will simply say that if one comes up during the course of the meeting, I would ask you to declare it at that time. Item 6A is County Council and Committee of the Whole minutes dated February 24th. That will be moved by Councillor Robinson, and I'm looking for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Burley. Is there any discussion on those minutes? If not, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? And are there any opposed? There are none. That's carried. Thank you. Item 6B is the CAO Performance Evaluation Committee minutes, which are dated March 1st. I'm looking for a mover by Councillor Boddy, seconded by Councillor Woodbury. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that too is carried. Item 6C is the CAO Performance Evaluation Committee closed meeting minutes, which were also dated March 1st, 2022. I'll need a mover. Councillor Milne, seconded by Councillor Patterson. If there's any discussion, we would have to go into closed session. So indicate if you want discussion, but otherwise I will call the question. All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? That too is carried. Thank you. Item 6D is the Long-Term Care Redevelopment Task Force minutes, which are dated March 3rd. That is moved by Councillor Robinson. I'm looking for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Mackey. Any discussion on those minutes? I can't see none. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That too is carried. We have no closed meeting matters, and we have no bylaws. And so we're down to item number 9, good news and celebrations. Councillor Patterson. Let me turn off my mic.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. Good morning, County Council. The town of Hanover has been awarded a prestigious Marketing Canada Award from the Economic Developers Association of Canada. This award is for brand identity and recognizes our HIP initiative. HIP stands for Hanover's Innovative People Program, and it consists of 4 campaigns: The Apprentice, Matchmaker, Vegas North, and Startup Sarah. Our recently completed cultural plan was the key driver for HIP, which aims to help the town of Hanover reach several strategic goals. So along with thanks and appreciation to Hanover's Economic Development Committee, I want to congratulate April Marshall, our Economic Development Manager, for receiving her credentials as a certified economic development. And I just want to say things are hip in Hanover. Thank you.
I like that. Councillor Desai, you're next.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. I couldn't possibly top that because Grey Highlands is clearly not as hip. But what is happening in Grey Highlands is a in-person event on March 19th. It's being put on by the Grey County Junior Farmers, and it's going to be a dance. They use it as a fundraiser, and tickets are available if you get in touch with their social media page. They're $10 a pop, and I am very excited because I know Dr. Eyre has been saying we're moving into endemic from pandemic, but you really don't feel that until you see an event that's going to happen and you're this close to that event happening. And so I think that definitely fits good news and celebrations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desai. Next is Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Warden Hicks, and good morning, County Council. First of all, Councillor Patterson and Warden Hicks, congratulations on that esteem acknowledgement. That's wonderful. So at this time, I wish to acknowledge Sim Salta, Zach Erb, Jill Patterson, Janet Sperling, for their hard work in creating, curating, and developing the wonderful, informative, inspiring Pearls in Politics virtual exhibit. It truly was a pleasure participating in this Grey Roots exhibit that demonstrates the dedication and strength of women in politics contributing to Grey County. And I would also like to acknowledge the co-contributors to this, which were Councillors Klumpus and Patterson. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hutchison, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and morning, Grey County Council. Just wanted to congratulate Classy Metal Art, located in Ayton, for the Grey County 2021 Platinum Award for home decor, for the home decor category. So, congratulations to them. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that. I do not. Councillor Soever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. Yes, I'd like to advise that the Leath Heritage Depot has been awarded the Lieutenant Governor's Ontario Heritage Award for community leadership for its work on the Real History film series. The Leath Heritage Depot is a branch of the Blue Mountains Public Library. It's housed in the old train station in Leath, and it also doubles as a museum. And so the museum received the award for their short documentary film series, which showcases local voices and heritage across a number of topics of interest. To date, the museum has released 8 films on a variety of topics, including the apple industry, local Indigenous history, Leath fossils, to name a few. 2 of the films are actually 3D experiences where you can actually, as you move your mouse around, you can actually look and look around. It's like being there. So it's a great way to actually go dive on the wreck of the Mary Ward and walk through the scenic caves area while a Indigenous person highlights the various features that were important to the First Nations there. So just like to congratulate the Leath Heritage Depot on winning this prestigious award.
Congratulations. Next will be Councillor Bordignon.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. Just a note, general note about council. At a special meeting of council last week, we had a vacant council seat and we had many qualified applicants, and we appointed Bill Abbots, who was a former councillor in the town of Thornbury before amalgamation. He'll be sworn in on Monday, and I know people around the council table will welcome him as he joins for the rest of the 2018-22 term. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden, and good morning, everyone. And I just wanted to announce the upcoming regional job fairs. This year, the job fairs will be in person, and we're excited about that. They are accepting registrations now for businesses, and the dates and locations are as followed. As March the 31st from 2 until 6 p.m. at the P&H Center in Hanover. March 31st from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Bayshore Community Center in Owen Sound, and April 5th from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Community Center in Meaford. And any businesses that are interested in registering can reach out to Y Employment Services, or they can find the form on the Grey County website. And we just encourage job seekers to come out and see what opportunities are available. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Keaveney. Councillor Woodbury.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention Maple Fest is back in Holstein, April 9th and 10th. Congratulations, Hanover. And if we copied you, we would be SIP. So come on out to Maple Fest and you can sip maple syrup. I don't know, but thanks.
Very good. CAO.
Thanks, Mr. Warden. And I'm going to talk about your stuff though, so maybe you should talk about it. Okay. Okay. I'm so good at this. Just a shout out to on behalf of all the staff here, to our colleagues at the City of Owen Sound. In the clippings today, we saw the notice that the Ministry of the Environment gave Owen Sound a perfect score on their water quality inspections. And knowing what a tremendous task that is and all of the criteria that you have to meet to get a perfect score is a wonderful achievement. And I just wanted to say to my colleagues, well done. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Body.
Yes, thank you. That was actually the topic I was going to hit. It's little things, you know, we all have to go through those inspections under the Clean Water Act, I think it's called, every year. And usually there's something that they want you to do a little differently or a little better. And these are little things that we often forget about that helps us attract new business, new industry. When you've got a perfect score in your water system, it's something that we can use to attract different businesses and jobs to a great county. So we are pretty proud of that. And we do have a good staff that works pretty hard over the years getting this together with wastewater. So yeah, thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Councillor Body. Not see any other hands, so I will invite Sim Salata.
Thank you, Warden. It's Jill Patterson here. I'll set up Sim and then she'll take over. Just really briefly, I wanted to mention that in 2011, Grey Roots Museum and Archives debuted the Pearls in Politics exhibition, which featured the history and ongoing contribution of women in politics. Now based on a notice of motion brought forward by Councillor Desai in March of 2021, and in recognition of International Women's Day, Grey Roots Museum and Archives has refreshed its popular Pearls in Politics exhibition to be presented year-round as a digital experience. And in March of every year, we'll make it have a special place, pride of place on our website's front page. So now I'm happy to share the floor with Grey Roots curator Sim Salata, who can give you a quick peek of the Pearls in Politics page online.
Great. Can people now see the Pearls in Politics online?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay, so this will be highlighted for the month of March. This will be the first thing that you see on our website here. And if you just click into the actual exhibition, we have our 3 sitting mayors, whom I would like to thank for agreeing to take part in this extension of Pearls in Politics. This was begun by Susan Martin, who's now retired. Back in, she interviewed the women politicians of Grey County in 2010, which resulted in the exhibition being mounted in 2011. In 2019, we did again refresh the exhibit and put it out on display at the county building in the glass room in the center. And I would also like to thank Zach Erb for his help. He's our filling in for Katrina Perriton while she's off on maternity leave as our communications coordinator, and also Brad Fritz in IT, because without Brad's expertise, making this look pretty, it wouldn't have been ready in time. So I want to say a shout out to Brad. So we have our currently sitting mayors here with our past representatives down below. And so if you just click on any one of these, you get a drop down and you can read about the interviews that were done. And the audio clips are just below the body of the text. So you can hear some of the clips that our mayors contributed. And then all of the historical content going back to Nellie McClung and how the for further reading. So we anticipate that this will be of interest to high school civics classes, that sort of thing. So we're really proud that Zach's made this shorter, a little bit more easily digestible. And we think that it's a great story just to have on our website all the time. So it puts Grey County in context of what was going on in Ontario and in Canada with regard to the history of women and women's rights. So we hope that you'll explore it on your time, and just happy to be a part of this. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jill and Sim. That's very good. I was going to make a joke and say that I saw the picture of Councillor Robinson, and we can see that she's featured outstanding in her field. Sorry. All right. Do we have any? I try. It is corny. That was good. Yeah. All right. Where are we now? Got good news and celebrations. We're all done with that, are we? Excellent. So we'll now look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor O'Leary. I'm looking for somebody online, maybe. Councillor Hutchison. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. We'll take a second to turn over to Committee of the Whole. Okay, we are now meeting as a Committee of the Whole. I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any declaration of interest, pecuniary or otherwise? Seeing none, once again, I'll urge you to make that declaration if it comes up during the course of the meeting. Oh, online. I thought you were. Hi, good morning, Councillor Carleton. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Warden.
Okay, we're on item 3 in the Committee of the Whole agenda. And 3A is business arising from the minutes, and we have a notice provided by Councillor Soever. So I guess you'll move it, Councillor Soever.
Yes, I'll be happy to move that motion.
And sorry, I'm going to be looking for a seconder just to get it on the floor. Someone like to second this? Councillor Bordignon. Okay, Councillor Soever. I'm sorry, you need to turn your mic on.
There we go. Yes. The reason I'm bringing this motion is that, you know, we always, when we look at our budget, we look at the spending side, but the revenue side is equally as important. And we have a lot of growth happening now, and you know, I think it is a struggle for MPAC. They only have 4 assessors for all of Grey County to track down this missing assessment. And so as these new buildings are built, it's important that they show up on the assessment rolls all the time. For instance, in the Blue Mountains, we've had we've tracked down a lot of ours. In the 3 years prior to this term of council, we were roughly finding 65% of the value of the building permits from the previous year every year. So that meant that some was not getting caught immediately. And in 2019, we were able to raise that to 272% of the previous year's building permits. And now the last 2 years, we've been at slightly over 100% of the value of the building permits from the year before. So I think we're pretty much caught up, although the staff tells me that there are still building permits that have been closed off that haven't been reassessed. And so they maintain a spreadsheet and make sure that MPAC is advised when building permits are closed off and that the assessment gets recorded as soon as possible. So I think that's the reason for my the motion was that throughout Grey County, if you look at the percent of the building permit value captured in supplementary assessment in the various communities, it varies greatly from a high of 89% and to a low of 5%. So clearly, you know, the two numbers aren't directly correlatable because there are reasons why a building permit may not accrue to the assessment base, but that ratio is an indication that not all municipalities are working to the same degree. And so therefore, you know, Grey County then does not have as big a tax base as it should. And so my motion reads, where it is to the benefit of Grey County that all of its lower tier municipalities diligently work with MPAC to capture all assessment, and where it's to the benefit of Grey County that all of its lower tier municipalities have well-financed community improvement plans, because all of the community improvement plans really do look to enhance the communities and contribute to the welfare of Grey County as a whole, as well as the individual community. So what I'm suggesting that it be resolved that in any year in which the lower tier delivers more than its budgeted amount of supplementary taxation as projected in the county budget, such excess revenue shall be contributed by the county to that lower tier's community improvement plan as part of the year-end transfers. So what this means is every year the county comes up with a budget, and this year the county budgeted $1.184 million as supplementary coming in. And these are projections based on numbers they get from MPAC. And if a community was to work very diligently and exceed that amount, then they would get the difference that wasn't budgeted for, put into their community improvement plan. Now, if everybody works diligently, then obviously that assessment stays there forever. So any excess revenue that's collected in future years would accrue to the county. So we're only talking about the first year. So for instance, if a community, say the budget said there was going to be 200,000 in supplementary from a community, and they actually found 400,000 in supplementary, then 200,000 would be excess to the budget. So that should be available to be transferred and could be transferred to the community improvement plan. There are precedents for this. Most recently, Meaford had they worked very diligently on solving an issue with the base and getting the base put onto the assessment rolls. And they received that extra revenue toward attainable housing. So I think, this is something that provides an incentive to communities to work as diligently as possible and provides benefits to the county in terms of the more assessment that can be found, the lower the county tax rate will be, the lower the communities, lower tier communities tax rate will be. So it's a benefit to our taxpayers in all ways. And it also benefits the school system in that there's extra revenue for education. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Councillor Sauber. Any other speakers to the motion? I do not see anyone else. So is it time to call the question on the motion before us? Councillor Mellon. Okay, Madam Clerk.
All right. So you're voting on the notice of motion as it is up on the screen. Councillor Mackey.
Yes.
Councillor Gamble.
Yes.
Councillor Burley.
No.
Councillor Carlton.
Yes.
Councillor McQueen.
Yes.
Councillor Desai. Councillor Patterson. Councillor or Warden Hicks. Just tell me. Opposed? Thank you. Councillor Clumpus. Councillor Keaveney. Yes. Councillor Body. Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Woodbury. Councillor Millen. Councillor Soever. Councillor Bourdignon.
In favor.
Councillor Robinson.
In favor.
Councillor Hutchinson.
In favor.
The motion is carried 51 to 39.
Council, there are a number of considerations with regard to what's been proposed in this notice of motion. With your indulgence, I would like to be able to bring forward a staff report that provides some analysis to you of the implications of moving forward in this direction. It, well, on the surface, seems to be a straightforward and beneficial thing to do. As I say, there are a number of quite serious considerations that I think you should be aware of. And I think we would want to structure this carefully to be assured that there were not unintended consequences as a result of taking this action. So if there's no objection, we'll work on a staff report to bring back just to outline all of the various considerations when it comes to something like this. Thank you.
Better turn on my mic. We're on to the consent agenda now. Is there anything that needs to be pulled for separate discussion in the consent agenda? If that's the case, then I'll call for a mover to approve the consent. Oh, Councillor Sauer. Right, so 5D. Okay, anything else from anyone? So could I get a mover, please, to approve the consent agenda with the one item being pulled, 5D? Moved by Councillor Hutchison, seconded by Councillor Bordignon. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 6A, which is the governance information report that puts Madam Clerk on deck. I need a mover and seconder to put the item on the floor. Moved by Councillor Woodbury and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Just a second for Madam Clerk to get to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Warden and Council. This was actually a very much a team effort in this report, pulling a lot of history together. So Tara and I will be speaking to various areas of the report today. The report's being brought forward as a result of the notice of motion from November of last year's Committee of the Whole. The report is for information purposes in hopes that it provides Council with an outline of various governance aspects relative to Grey County Council. Should Council support its endorsement today, it will serve as a backgrounder for the incoming Council should they wish to make any changes relative to any areas of governance. As Council is aware, various items make up governance models in municipalities. The history and a high-level overview of some of these items were part of the or are part of the report, along with some substantial legal and legislative considerations related to those items. As you can see, there has been substantial history of governance review in Grey County through various governance task forces and staff reports. The report certainly isn't an exhaustive list, but it is used to provide a basis for future decision-making opportunities. So jumping right in, and it is much longer report than the Clerk's Department is normally fond of doing, but there is a lot of information in there. First one being weighted voting. Weighted voting, as I'm sure everyone around the horseshoe is aware, has been the subject of many task force and staff reports over the years. Grey County's weighted voting is laid out in the County of Grey Act 1993 and provides that each member of council will be given a weighted vote determined by the electors after each municipal election. One vote is provided for every per municipality for every 1,000 electors or part thereof. And the higher number given to the mayor should there be an uneven number. A weighted or recorded vote is only permitted in council or committee of the whole, and only when requested preceding or immediately following the calling of a question. Changes to weighted voting will require a triple majority of the lower triple majority. For those that may be unaware, triple majority is the majority of our local municipalities, representing the majority of our electors, and then the majority of Grey County Council. Other aspects will also include a public meeting, and there are mandatory timelines required under the Municipal Act.
I'm going to start by speaking to council composition. The report outlines the various requirements related to council composition within the Municipal Act. Currently, all members are indirectly elected to Grey County Council based on your representation at the local level and your position as mayor and deputy mayor. The report outlines the options that have been brought forward through various task forces and staff reports, and there are requirements under the Act related to the timing of any changes, as well as some triple majority requirements.
As Tara just noted, Grey County Council is currently indirectly elected. There are options related to full or partial direct election outlined in the report. Staff reports regarding the direct election of the warden were completed in 2017, which outlines the requirements relative to this change. At that time, the required support being the triple majority was not obtained to move forward with this change. For changes related to the election of council, there are very few examples of an upper tier municipality where a hybrid model is used, but they are out there. However, as you note from the report, the majority of upper tiers do have indirectly elected council members similar to Grey County. And as noted, the requirements under the Municipal Act are outlined within the report. Next is the term of warden, and it has been also a topic of many discussions at task forces and within staff reports. Currently, the term is a one-year term, with the inaugural session being held every December to elect the warden for the following year. Most recent report was also completed in 2017, where the status quo was supported by council. A review of other counties was completed, and the information is contained in the report, with the majority of councils maintaining a one-year term. There are some that have two, and there is one I'm aware of that has a four-year term. There are no requirements within the Act relative to the changes to the term of warden.
For wards in a municipality, this is something that I'm not aware of that the county has looked at in the past, but the Municipal Act does authorize municipalities to divide or redivide municipality into wards. Currently, municipalities that have a ward-only system are only found in lower tier and single tier governments. Wellington County's model, which is the example that is noted in the staff report, has a hybrid model with county council representatives from all the local municipalities as well as county wards. The report notes that a change to a ward system would be limited to the structure found in Wellington County. However, there could be additional ward options, and if that is something that council wants to pursue in the future, staff could do some further research on that. Changes to the current boundary system require public consultation, and staff would likely be recommending using external resources to assist with those boundary adjustments and population projections that are incorporated into establishing wards. Sorry. And meeting structure was another consideration. Grey County has been using committee of the whole structure since 2017. And prior to this, a standing committee structure was used by combining the like portfolios under 4 different standing committees. At the time, changes were made to use a committee of the whole structure based on a request from council for more, for all of council to participate in discussion and to make use of efficient use of councilors' time. Changes to the meeting structure can be made with support from the majority of council and do not require any additional consultations or approvals, but changes would be required to the to the procedural bylaw for the change to take effect.
Finally, public access and public participation. A report on the public question and comment period at Grey County Council was the subject of a 2018 report, where staff found that very few counties have a public comment or question period, while many of the local lower tier municipalities include this in their agendas. The local municipalities are the closest level of government to the residents of Grey County. Grey County, although today we have no delegations, but we have a very robust delegations. This is one of the few meetings in the last year that we haven't had at least one delegation coming. Our system is very robust, and you do as council hear from a variety of community stakeholders and residents on various topics, both at committee of the whole and at subcommittee meetings. There are other ways other than a delegation that residents can relay their concerns to their elected officials, including phone calls, emails, and in-person visits as permitted. Should changes in direction be supported for this matter, updates to the procedural bylaw will be required, as well as the development of a policy to ensure consistency with public commenting periods and standards are adhered to. So that is, I say, a brief overview of the governance information. It is our hope that this can serve for the incoming council as a base for that council to look at making or considering some changes in the next term. It will serve there. There are links provided throughout that report, and in the end that provide you with a fairly complete history of these discussions at Grey County Council. And Tara and I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Council. Councilor Desai.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. I want to express my immense gratitude to staff for creating this report and for the quick turnaround on the report as well. The one question I have in relation to this report is whether it would be appropriate or whether it would be within order for this council today to defer this to a meeting that we know would occur in the next term of council, so that a decision can be made in a timely fashion for changes to occur in the term of council after that.
So Councillor Desai, I think that's exactly what's anticipated in the motion. So the motion is to receive and then that the information report be brought back to the incoming 2023 to 2026 council. Go ahead.
And I understand that, but rather than have it open-ended, let's say the 12th of January 2023, if the next council decides to stick with the current meeting schedule, would be the first meeting in 2023. Can we move a motion today to defer this item to that, so that there is a finite date when this will come back and it's not left in the air perhaps, and it doesn't get lost in the different things that concern a council?
Maybe I'll let Madam Clerk respond to that. I don't know how specific we can be with respect to directing activities of a future council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. And through you, that was actually our intent. It is on our work plan for within the first 18 months of the new council coming in, understanding that they will need to get their feet wet and have an understanding of council and county operations before they dive into any sort of governance review. So that is on our work plan for the within the first 18 months of council.
Very good. Anyone else? Councillor Silver.
Yes, so certainly there's a lot to digest here. My question is that this would require public meetings and a full public process, would it not?
I'm sorry, Councillor Silver, which specifically are you talking about? We're not making any changes today. We're just seeking support. Various aspects within this report on specific pieces of governance would require public participation and triple majority.
Yes, that was my question, just about the public process. And so I think, there's a lot in here. On the aspects of population, population doesn't address our seasonal taxpayers, of which there are many. And so in that regard, I think the voters list is the best way. Some people will not be counted in that because they have no interest in being on the voters list. So but that too is democracy. If you don't want to get involved in the process, then you're not counted. And so I do like the current system. On the election of warden, I don't know, I've not been a warden, but I would think a 2-year term would be best because the warden does interact with a lot of other levels of government. And so, getting to know people and be effective, 1 year might not be enough to build those relationships. And but the one thing on the election of warden, I do think that we should do away with the secret ballot, because I think all our taxpayers have the right to know who we voted for, particularly when there are wardens with different opinions on many issues. So if you have two candidates that are on the opposite side of a number of issues and they don't agree, then I think our taxpayers do have the right to know who we voted for, because the warden does have some weight, particularly in lobbying for positions with other levels of government. The deputy mayor and mayor being on council, I have experienced times when I put on my Great County hat and have to leave my Blue Mountains hat behind, where it is difficult. So I don't know, election of county councilors, direct election does have an appeal because it doesn't put the mayor in such a conflict of interest, when there may be something that may be good for the county and not so good for their municipality. So I think that's an interesting dilemma. And further thinking about that, somebody did mention to me the other day that, it's very strange that at county council, you're supposed to leave your municipal hat behind, but then you are seated according to your municipality. And so as we sit around this circle here, we start with, and we are arranged alphabetically by municipality. So we are assigned to a municipality, although when you read our obligations as county councilors, you're supposed to put the interest of the county first, but we are grouped and vote in the order of our municipality. So they pointed out that seems to be a little inconsistent with our obligations to represent the county as a whole. Lastly, with regard to the public comment period, I see the concerns are exactly the same concerns we had at the local level when we brought in our public comment period. But we found that actually the public comment period is not that concerning. We haven't had a lot of frivolous or vexatious comments. There has been some critical comment, of course, but it gives people an opportunity to express their views, because the problem we have was by the time the agenda comes out, it's too late to submit a deputation on that topic. And I know, because we want to get the deputation materials in early. So it gives people an opportunity, if they see something on the agenda, to come and express their opinions. But we really haven't seen it used to the extent, like we've seldom had to, there's usually one or two. And even during COVID, people submit comments and they're read by the clerk. But there aren't that many, but the ones there are, some of them are, very timely, and it allows people to get a concern off their chest, and then kind of diffuses the person's frustration over an issue just because now they know they've been heard. And so that's all I have, and I want to thank you again for this very comprehensive report. There's a lot of big issues here to deal with, so but those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. While I agree with some comments that have been made by Councillor Sarver, especially with regards to the double header comment, I would also like to point out that I understand that going by population would not count the seasonal residents, but the point being that there's more people who are not currently counted. This includes young people under the voting age. It includes new immigrants who either rent or own residential properties in the county, new immigrants who own businesses in the county. There is more people that are excluded right now than there is that would be excluded if we went to the population method. And I think that's the important part. It is democracy either way, and I don't debate that, but it's about how many people we're including within that democracy. I also recognize that there's no point debating this now because we can't make a decision on it. But I do want to point out that there's more people that aren't counted under the current system than there would be under the new system.
Thank you, Councillor Sarver. You'll need to turn your microphone on, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Just like to correct something. The renters, if they're not citizens, can vote as long as you're the municipal elections. So we do allow them to vote and be on the voters list, so they are counted.
Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And notwithstanding how we think this is very important, few things have taken up more oxygen around this table than this particular report, or the items in this particular report, was saving, except perhaps coyote bounties or whatever it's called nowadays. The clerk will appreciate that. But I would suggest that most residents, if not every one resident in Grey County, is less interested in how we govern ourselves than how we deal with the issues that affect them day to day. And I would suggest we maybe focus a little more on that than on how we decide how we're going to decide on stuff. So anyway, just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I appreciate the report, the detail in it, and I certainly like learning and discussing decision-making, good governance, and just the whole idea of how we arrive at decisions. So structure is super important. The shout out I would like to make is to the Clerk's Department, Grey County Clerk's Department. In terms of citizen participation, I have certainly noticed firsthand the degree of importance and participation that has occurred, whether it's through delegations, submitting correspondence that arrive on our agendas, phone calls, emails, and just overall attendance through virtual participation, I think is really important. So well done to the Clerk's Department for encouraging the participation of our Grey County residents and organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Desai.
Sorry, I just wanted to confirm what Councillor Sarver said was non-citizens of Canada can vote in municipal elections. That's what I heard, and I just want to confirm that's what he said.
Yes, I believe if you're a renter, you can, as long as you can show that you're a resident in the community.
I believe that is incorrect, Warden Hicks, because according to AMO, who can vote in elections? Anyone can vote in a municipal election who on the day of the election is 18 years of age or older, a Canadian citizen, and either a resident of the municipality or a property owner or tenant or the spouse or same-sex partner of an owner or tenant in the municipality during a specified time just before the election.
Thank you. I stand corrected then if that is the case.
Okay, anyone else on this subject matter? If not, I think it's time to call the vote on the motion before us. So this is to receive and then to have it come back before the next council within that 18-month to 2-year period. All those in favor? Is there anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Sarah and Heather. I'm going to suggest that we take a 10-minute break. So we'll come back at 11:15. I'll ask you to turn off your sound and video. We'll see you at 11:15 sharp. Okay. We have quorum, so we'll commence. We're going to be dealing with item 6B. Just one sec, folks. We're back in session. Item 6B, the Grey Roots Museum and Archives operating plan. That puts Jill on deck. And I need I have a mover already. Moved by Councillor Robinson. I need a seconder, Councillor Keaveney. Jill, there you are. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Warden Hicks, and thank you, members of council. I'm just going to share my screen here, bring up the document I'm speaking about. All right, are you guys all seeing the Grey Roots Museum and Archives operating plan? Fantastic.
Yes, we are.
All right. So the document seeking endorsement is the Grey Roots 2022 to 2023 operational plan, which serves as a foundational document for planning post-pandemic recovery and programming innovation at Grey Roots Museum and Archives. This 2-year plan, developed by staff, extends the objectives of the 2016 to 2020 Grey Roots strategic plan and leads into the development of the Economic Development, Tourism, and Culture Master Plan slated for 2023. The 4 strategic goals outlined in the operation plan include collaboration, accessibility, sustainability, and evaluation. Each description of the strategic goals includes an aspirational imagine section to encourage innovation, along with accompanying performance measures to ensure resources are appropriately allocated. I'll give you a quick overview of each goal. So the first one is collaboration. Let me just flick through here. So Grey Roots will work to support partnerships and collaborations that create new opportunities to raise awareness of Grey Roots' diverse cultural history and encourage new audiences to visit the museum. Grey Roots will spark relationships between community organizations and representatives to create innovative projects, exhibits, and programs that bring authentic, historically accurate, and diverse cultural voices to Grey Roots public offerings for visitors and residents in Grey County. This strategic goal also incorporates our ongoing recognition and support of Grey Roots Museum and Archives volunteers. We will continue to provide fulfilling experiences to our talented and dedicated volunteers and explore ways to engage new volunteers in Grey Roots activities and projects. And the next goal is accessibility. So providing better access to the museum and archives can come in several forms. This goal describes our commitment to considering the needs of persons with disabilities in our design choices, exploring ways of extending access to museum spaces through the season, and developing free admission initiatives and off-site outreach programs to remove barriers to participation. The next goal is sustainability. Grey Roots will create public experiences through a lens of responsible revenue generation. Through the review of existing programs, events, and fee structures, we will identify which activities are covering their costs and have a demand in the community and ensure offerings are priced appropriately. When developing new public offerings, we will ensure that we are targeting our identified visitor groups, i.e. families and seniors. The number of events and programs will be strategic to meeting or exceeding our revenue targets. We will build our fundraising capacity by investigating eligible government funding sources, pursuing sponsorship opportunities, and philanthropic campaigns. Connecting back to our guiding principles, we will also continue to focus on environmental sustainability by choosing the best practices to reduce waste and other harmful impacts on our ecosystem. And then the last strategic goal is evaluation. Oops, sorry. So in anticipation of the 2023 master plan to be developed for the Economic Development, Tourism, and Culture Department, Grey Roots Museum and Archives is presented with an opportunity to use the next 2 years to gather critical data that can inform the development of the master plan. Grey Roots staff will insert an evaluation component to every appropriate aspect of the Grey Roots experience so that we can be guided by data and community feedback in the creation of a new 5-year plan. This base of understanding will ensure more meaningful and informed engagement and consultation with stakeholders and partners during the development of the Grey Roots component of the EDTC master plan. And just to summarize, for the period of 2022 to 2023 covered in this operating plan, a new guiding principle born out of the COVID-19 pandemic is flexibility. With the uncertainty surrounding public health requirements and future trends in visitation, Grey Roots will need to be ready to adapt and adjust plans while working towards common goals. Performance measures and evaluation will enable this flexibility and better support of staff in making recommendations and decisions. That ends my presentation, and I'm happy to open the floor for feedback and questions.
Thank you very much, Jill. Council, are there any questions or discussion? Could I please see the people online? You would stop sharing your screen. There we go. I see no hands there, and I see, oh, go ahead, Savannah.
Thank you, Warden. I just wanted to say a real big thank you to Jill and to the staff at Grey Roots. They put a lot of effort into this operating plan. We've been operating without a strategic plan for the last 2 years, as with our entire department, because COVID was just not the time to do a new strategic plan. So in preparation for next year, when we are in that spot to be able to properly plan for the future, we will have had this year and most of next year to really dig into the data, really look at what we do offer at Grey Roots so that we can make some good firm decisions for moving forward. Because museums, just like every other business and operation out there, has really changed through COVID. And it's giving us an opportunity to take a hard look about where we're headed in the future and how we balance good business practice so that we are looking at those revenue opportunities and our product offerings, but also that public access and making sure that we are really available to all of our community at every age level. So I just wanted to say a special shout out because they did put a tremendous amount of work into this, and it is a wonderful document that I think is going to give us a firm ground to move forward on and help us achieve all of the good things that we can at Grey Roots.
Great, thank you for that, Savannah, and thank you, Jill, as well. Councillor Mill.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Jill, for the report, and Savannah for your comments. I think it's really important going forward with the number of people that have moved to our communities in the past 2 years because of the pandemic. And, a lot of them maybe came just because it's not the GTA and they're not entirely certain where they've moved to. So I think it's really important going forward that we have resources like Grey Roots that can tell the story of who we are and where these new people have moved to. And so I'm really excited to see the report and the energy that is going to be put into promoting Grey Roots going forward. So thank you very much for all involved.
Thank you, Councillor Mill. Councillor Mackey, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank Jill for this report. Just wondering what conversations have taken place with the agricultural societies with the donation of the land to the west of us and how that factors into the strategic plan going forward.
Savannah?
Sorry, I can take that one, Jill, if you'd like. Through you, Warden, it is very much a part of Jill's work plan and my work plan as we're looking at the opportunities that lie ahead and what kind of alignment strategically we can do, what kind of programming, and how we can really share this space more broadly. So I know there are lots of conversations happening, and planning is very much involved in that because we would be nowhere without them. So very early stages yet, but absolutely on Jill and my work plan.
Thank you. I do not see any other hands. Oh, Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Worship. A couple of things I want to highlight in this report that I really appreciate include the Imagine section, which talks about the very first point being increased representation of Indigenous, Black, and other underrepresented communities throughout Grey Roots exhibitions, programs, and events. And I think this is a terrific step in the right direction, especially when one of my concerns when we initially passed the land acknowledgement policy was that we're going to do things and not have actions to follow up on that. And I think this really puts an action to, we recognize that there's Indigenous history in our communities, and we're going to put a spotlight on those. We're going to recognize that there's history that we haven't necessarily talked about much, and we're going to put a spotlight on those histories. The other part that I really like is the event that they're talking about with GB Leath to celebrate multiculturalism. That's mainly because I love events. The one question I have is with regards to the in development section, and I understand that it's in development, so there might not necessarily be a fulsome answer to this, but what are we trying to achieve with the Indigenous Advisory Circle? Maybe not specifically, but in general, what are we trying to achieve through that?
Thank you very much, Councillor Desai. The Indigenous Advisory Circle the hope is that it helps us increase the representation of Indigenous history and culture in a way that is fitting with that adage, nothing about us without us. So we really want to make sure we're consulting thoroughly with the community before we, come up with new ideas for programming or exhibits, and that it's really as Indigenous led as possible, so that we're connecting regularly and getting that community buy-in from the Indigenous community.
I do not see any other hands. Oh, Councillor Body.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. And one of the things that I noticed isn't in there is the Asian Chinese community is part of it, which I know has been very involved with the Grey Roots and very much supported by Grey Roots over the years. 100, 120, 150 years, I think that they've been in the community. So that's just one that jumps out on me that I don't see there, but I assume is in the mix. Thanks.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I am certainly excited about this report and the opportunities that Grey Roots Museum and Archives has before them in the next number of years. So I'm just anticipating the next cornerstone and milestone that will be created. I understand the importance of public space and preserving history and the new ways to experience the museum. And I'm just putting out the question, what more can this council do as a patron to support Grey Roots Museum and Archives? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Robinson. And I think, if your constituents are looking for a public space to gather or to get together as a community, feel free to, pop our name out there. We're always hoping for people to use this space. I really feel strongly that museums should be useful to the community, and any way that you come and use our space, you'll eventually be like, oh, I'll come back for that exhibit, or I'll come back for those lectures. It kind of springboards. And the more we can represent diversity in our programming and exhibits, that representation really matters. And when the community sees themselves in the museum, they'll feel they belong. And that's the hope that we're pushing towards.
Mr. Warden, it truly is a place of belonging. So I can't underscore that statement enough. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Okay, one last check and check online. I think that's it for hands. So perhaps it's time to call the question on the motion before us. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we're now dealing with item 6C, which is the Saugeen Cedar West, which puts Scott Taylor on deck. Looking for a mover. I'm going to say moved by Councillor Patterson, since this is in Hanover, and seconded by Councillor Mackey. Scott, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Warden Hicks and members of council. I realized about 2 weeks ago I was in this exact same position as being the last reports before lunch. I do promise to keep this one a little bit more concise, but I also don't want to shortchange any of the exciting news about these two proposed developments that we have, including the feedback received by both agencies and the public. So what we have before us is a proposed plan of subdivision in the town of Hanover. The lands are shown there highlighted in blue. This is on the northeast end of Hanover. It is called Saugeen Cedar Heights West. Just kind of to the southeast across the county road there, coming off of 14th Street, you will see.
Sorry, just one sec. We've got
Okay, great. Sorry about that. So just to the southeast there off of 14th Street, you'll see what's known as Saugeen Cedar Heights East. And immediately to the north of that, you'll see a development under construction called Brenlee. In this case, there will be connections from Saugeen Cedar Heights West to the county road, which is Grey Road 28 or 24th Avenue in Hanover, as well as a connection to the south in 17th Street. The one thing you'll see just from looking at this air photo, this is a challenging site in terms of the layout of the site. It's oddly shaped. You've got the river to the north, and there's actually a smaller water course immediately on the southern boundary of the site. And then you've got two properties that are sort of the donut hole in the middle of this property. So in terms of laying out a subdivision on a nice sort of rectangular grid pattern, this is challenging. There are some environmental features on site too that the developer has had to work with their consultants and the Conservation Authority and the town on to look at preserving those features to the extent feasible. In terms of the composition of the development's proposed for 31 single detached dwelling lots, 46 semi-detached dwelling lots, and 37 townhouses. So in addition to that mix of houses, there's going to be an additional block, which may or may not be used for future development, as well as some trail connections, some open space areas, and trail parking blocks to acknowledge the fact that Hanover has got this wonderful trail network in this area of the town, and there are people that drive to connect to it. The lots will all front off of new internal roads. There will be one road connection out to the county road, and as I said, there'll be the further connection to 17th Street to the south. There have been a number of technical reports and studies done, and there was a number of addendums done to those reports in response to the comments received by agencies and the public. There was a public meeting held for this application back in 2021, and the town of Hanover has approved the associated zoning bylaw amendment for this application. So this is the layout of the proposed subdivision. What you will see, it might be tough to see, but there is this block 124 in kind of the northeast of the development. This has been an evolving thing in that initially that road wasn't going to end in a cul-de-sac right there. It was going to kind of end in a turn, and that there would be a future roadblock through that block 124. As part of the work on this development and as part of the work with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, there were some seeps identified in that area. And so they wanted to allow for further monitoring and further investigation in that area. So that block has been set aside for now, and it could be used for development in the future, or it may remain as an open space block. You'll see both a green line and a red line at the top and the bottom of the plan. And those represent construction and floodline boundaries for this development based on, as I said, the water course to the south, as well as the river to the north. So the actual amount of developable land in this development is far less than the 12-hectare footprint of the property. We did receive robust public consultation on this one. There was lots of people that chose to share their time with us at the public meeting and submit comments in writing. And we received a number of comments from the regular agencies involved, including town staff at the town of Hanover. We've also been working closely with our County Transportation Services Department on this because many of the comments from the public related to traffic and safety issues around Grey Road 28 in this regard. With respect to some of the comments we received from the public, this is just a brief summary of some of those comments, but we did hear concerns over the need to connect to 17th Street, and particularly those people in the subdivision to the south felt that if they could avoid that connection, then there might be less traffic coming through their residential neighborhood. In this case, when that subdivision was constructed to the south, there was a road stub left and partially constructed to the north. So there's always been the intent that there would be this connection. There was a traffic study done for this development, and we've been working very closely with both town staff and, as I said, our county transportation services staff. So we don't believe there will be any undue traffic impacts. There will still be a lot of the main traffic coming back out to the county road. One of the other concerns of the neighbors has been construction traffic for the subdivision, and it's their desire that that construction traffic go through the county road rather than the residential subdivision, which is an entirely reasonable request and something that could be incorporated into the subdivision agreement. There was lots of concerns about pedestrian safety, particularly with respect to lack of sidewalks in the subdivision to the south and lack of sidewalks currently on 24th Avenue. There will be a walkway running parallel to 24th Avenue as part of this development, and there will be sidewalks in the proposed development in the Saugeen Cedar Heights West development. This doesn't change the fact that there's not currently sidewalks in the development to the south, but at least there will be safe options for pedestrians that want to move through this area. Some of those concerns also related to speeds and traffic on Railroad 28. We know that this area of Hanover, as you saw from that previous air photo, is developing actually quite rapidly. And we know that as that development happens, there will be changes in the use and likely how people view Railroad 28. If it's viewed as a rural cross section with not much development on either side, regardless of what we as the county post the speed limit at, people are going to be more inclined to drive on it like it's a rural road and maybe even assume that it's an 80-kilometer-an-hour zone. But as we see development happening on either side of the county road here, we do believe this will help create the feeling that this is a residential and further to the south, a commercial area and not an area you can speed through. Our Transportation Services Department has also been using temporary traffic calming measures on some of the county roads in Hanover to look at getting people to, encouraging people to slow down in that regard. We also heard concerns about the loss of privacy, and particularly on those neighbors to the south. There is going to be a trail immediately to the north of their property in blocks 116 and 117 of the development. We do believe that there will be sufficient lands between their property, the water course and the trail, and that we'll try to retain as much vegetation there as possible and work with both the Conservation Authority and the town to ensure that that trail isn't impacting on the natural environment or the social environment of those neighbors in that regard. This trail, I should mention, has been long planned, and it's been included in the town of Hanover's plan for a long time. And so by mapping out those trail locations ahead of time, it allows the town of Hanover to clearly communicate their needs when the developments like this come forward. So kudos to the town in that regard. We certainly heard concerns about loss of trees and impacts on the natural environment. There was an environmental impact study done as well as an addendum. It's been reviewed by town staff, county staff, and the Conservation Authority in this regard. There will be certain areas of the site where the trees and the vegetation will be maintained. There will certainly be areas where there is going to be cutting and there is going to be a tree replanting plan required as part of the development to compensate for some of those lost trees in that regard. We did hear concerns about the residential density on site. I should note that both the town and the county plan require a mix of residential dwelling types here and density that makes efficient use of land and infrastructure. The proposed density in this regard is actually just slightly less than what the county policies would require, but we believe this development is providing that good mix of uses, mix of dwelling types in terms of semis and towns and singles. And that range is approximately 72% between the semis and the towns and 28% singles here. We did hear concerns about potential for flooding or stormwater, and there has been a stormwater management report completed, and final sign off will be required on that as part of the draft conditions by both the town and the Conservation Authority. And then finally, we heard concerns about, if I'll just go back a bit here, that road stub that I mentioned earlier in here that was supposed to connect down through to this property. And initially the landowner of this property wanted to see that road stub connect because they believed it could further allow for their property to be serviced and developed in the future. In the end, as I said, because of the seeps, it might not be feasible. but there will still be feasibility for this road to connect to the north to provide that connection in that regard. This landowner has also notified us that there's a concern about servicing in this regard should this development impact their current well. We've been working with town staff on this issue, and they've agreed to include a clause in the subdivision agreement to suggest that if there is any impact to their well, of course, services would be run to the site now that town services are in the area. So I will say there was a number of changes made to this plan throughout the development process to address the public concerns, particularly with a large focus on providing that safe pedestrian access both through the development and to the trails. And that safe pedestrian access is also extended to making sure that when those trails cross the county road, we have appropriate level of safety for the pedestrians or cyclists using the trails, as well as for the automobile users. The conditions of draft approval do address the comments from town staff, the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, Canada Post, and the utility companies. As I said, the proposed density in this is slightly below the 25 units per net hectare. Currently, it's sitting at about 22 units per net hectare, and this is largely based on the natural features, the road network, and the existing layout challenges with the site. Should that future development block where there's the seeps develop in a safe manner in the future, that might increase the density in this regard. And then, as I said, there is going to be some vegetation preservation as well as offsite planting as a mitigation for some of the environmental impacts. So with that, county staff are satisfied that with the recommended conditions of draft plan approval, the subdivision has regard for matters of provincial interest under the Planning Act. It's consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to both the county and town official plan. As such, it's our recommendation that this report be received. We certainly acknowledge the valuable input we heard from members of the public and agencies in this regard, and that the committee of the whole consider approving this report. And with that, that's all I have, and certainly happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. If we could stop sharing the screen, I could see the people online as well, but we'll start with Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Scott, for your efforts to keep it brief. Nonetheless, the question I have is not directly related to the subdivision itself, but some of the comments you made in your report regarding County Road 28, or is it 24th Avenue? Both, same road. At what point does County Road 28 cease being what historically has been the Hanover bypass and become a street in the middle of Hanover, and the county find another route to classify as the Hanover bypass? Because it's been noted, and I think when the report or another report earlier came, transportation had a lot of headache around this one, entrances and sidewalks and all that kind of stuff. So I'm wondering, is there some appetite to stop calling it a county road, give it to Hanover, and seek another route around the town? I know the mayor of Hanover would be pleased to take it.
I think Randy, you want in on this?
Thank you for that, and thank you for that question. I know this is still on the Transportation Services Department's work plan in terms of looking at some of the connecting link recommendations from the Transportation Master Plan. We'll be bringing forward a report later this year in terms of identifying a proposed work plan in terms of getting to that stage so that we can have those discussions and conversations. One of the recommendations that staff are exploring and will be bringing forward as part of that report is setting up that work plan, but also setting up a recommending that we set up a task force, which would, unfortunately, in terms of up to the point between now and the election, we won't have necessarily sufficient time to be able to have in-depth discussions, but we think that setting out the course of action for moving that forward and having those discussions will be the content of that staff report. So you'll be seeing, council will be seeing that very soon.
Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Patterson.
I just thank you, Warden Hicks. I just want to thank Scott for the very thorough report.
And I'm really pleased to see that we've got a good mix of housing options coming forward. And now I think, I could be wrong, but we're going to, in Hanover, we're going to be able to say we have riverfront lots available. This is the first. Thank you. Anyone else? I think that's it. So with that said, on the motion, I'll call the question on the motion to receive the report, to acknowledge the written and oral submissions, and to approve the plan. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? You were in favor, Councillor Carlton? Anyways, it's carried. Okay. So we're on to item 6D, and that's with you again, Scott. And this is with respect to the Chapman LPA 10 final report. I need a mover to put it on the floor. I'll go with Councillor Desai, seconded by Councillor Clumpus.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. And so what we have before us is the official plan amendment that's been applied for by Chapman's Ice Cream in the municipality of West Grey, immediately abutting the municipality of Grey Highlands. And you can see the subject lands showing there in blue. The subject lands are about 44 hectares in size, but the actual expansion area that you're going to see on a subsequent slide is only 6.6 hectares in size. The lands are on the sort of northwestern edge of the settlement area of Markdale. You can see just to the kind of southwest, there is the municipal sewage lagoons there. There's Chapman's existing facilities immediately abutting these blue lands. And then I've highlighted just across the road there, there is a large new residential development being proposed on that property immediately across the highway. And that has an impact on some of the future transportation considerations for this proposed development. So with respect to the official plan amendment, just certainly noting some information that I'm sure council is well aware of with respect to Chapman's, but their current production and distribution facilities are in the municipality of Grey Highlands. In this case, based on the layout of their production site, there's no further room left to develop to expand their production facilities, which is why they purchased these lands immediately abutting in West Grey and are looking to expand their production facilities into West Grey. Chapman's currently employs over 800 people, and we've heard from them just recently that they wish to continue to grow their workforce in this regard and continue to expand their operations, which is good news for Grey Highlands, West Grey, and Grey County as a whole for sure. So proposed official plan amendment number 10, as I said, would redesignate 6.6 hectares of land. In the immediate future, Chapman's has plans for a 90,000 square foot expansion in building size, as well as additional parking. And then there could be future expansions also accommodated within the 6.6 hectare area. So there has also been a zoning amendment application applied for to the municipality of West Grey, and we held a joint public meeting with West Grey and Grey County on the official plan and zoning applications on October 18th, 2021. Should the zoning and the official plan amendment applications be approved, there would be future site plan control application as well. So what you see there is the Chapman's current production facility lands highlighted in red, and then in the red hatching is the proposed expansion lands. And you can see the sort of thick gray-black line there is the current municipal boundary through the site in that regard. In this respect, servicing provided to these subject lands would be provided through an extension of services from the municipality of West Grey, or from the municipality of Grey Highlands, sorry, into West Grey. And there's been ongoing discussions with staff at both municipalities in the county to look at a potential servicing agreement that could facilitate that to happen. With respect to public comments, we only heard one public comment, and that was from a neighbor who simply had a question about access onto Highway 10. We heard from a number of agencies, including the Conservation Authority and both municipalities in this regard. At this time, there's no specific outstanding agency concerns with respect to the official plan amendment, but there will be some further technical matters to be dealt with at the site plan control stage. Both municipalities and the county collaborated on hiring an engineering peer reviewer for this proposed development, and so they've certainly got some technical considerations that will need to be discussed at the site plan stage. The lands are currently designated rural, with a very small portion of hazard lands in the county official plan. This would redesignate the lands to the primary settlement area designation to allow for the expansion. As such, because it is a settlement area expansion, there was a comprehensive review triggered by this application. In this case, it was a scoped comprehensive review based on the nature of this expansion. And I should just explain, normally when you look at a comprehensive review to expand your settlement area, one of the first question is, should we be expanding in the north, the south, the east, or the west? In this case, there really only was one area to look at because they were looking at expanding their existing production. So we couldn't suddenly say, no, maybe we should look on the south end of Markdale. It just wouldn't be feasible. So that did scope the nature of this comprehensive review versus some others council may have seen in the past. As I said, there are some additional transportation considerations that we're going to want to talk about with both municipalities, the Ministry of Transportation, and our own county transportation services department with respect to the potential for a future access out onto Highway 10. And that development just across the road on Highway 10 is proposing a new access there. So the thought is if MTO would be supportive, we could look at a new intersection on both sort of the north and the south side of the highway that would connect to both the Chapman's development and this future residential development there as well. The zoning amendment will be considered in the future by West Grey Council, and the thought is that it would contain a holding symbol which would be subject to that future servicing agreement between the municipality of West Grey and the municipality of Grey Highlands, and it would also be subject to site plan control in that regard. With that, staff are satisfied that the matter has regard for matters of provincial interest under the Planning Act. It's consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the goals and objectives of the county official plan. I'd also like to note, just in closing here, that this has been a complicated application, and we've worked very closely with staff, both planning and transportation and servicing from both municipalities of West Grey and Grey Highlands. And it has been a truly collaborative effort. And to those representing both West Grey and Grey Highlands here, your staff have been wonderful to work with. And there's going to be further discussions as we move through the site plan process. But it's been a really good experience to date. And hopefully Chapman's would echo those comments as well. So with that, staff are recommending that this report be received, that the committee supports the redesignation of the 6.6 hectares to the primary settlement area, and that the appropriate bylaw be prepared for the next county council session. So that's all I have, but certainly be happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Scott. Deputy Warden McQueen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you for that report, Scott, and I'll pass those comments on to our staff for sure. The question is with the creating an intersection, we went from a one-town intersection to a two-town intersection, so now we're looking at 3 intersections. I just wondered, is that something to consider a roundabout, only because on busy times in the summer, Highway 10 is a very busy road, and it does have a tendency to back up. And I don't know if it's premature to say that, and I don't know if that's even worth considering, but is that something that has even been discussed or even thought of? And I don't know on Highway 10, there's no roundabouts at this time, but they have a tendency to build them more now to keep traffic moving. And I don't know if there's a thought on that. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Warden. Thank you for your question and your comment, Deputy Warden McQueen. It's certainly something that we can discuss moving forward. In this case, these discussions will be involving a number of parties, including the Ministry of Transportation, who arguably is the deciding factor here. But we also want to involve that developer on the other side of the highway, as well as, like I said, both municipalities and our transportation services staff. So at this stage, there's been no designs for that potential intersection. There's some further discussions to be had. Certainly, we will be considering the traffic impacts of the through traffic, as well as the traffic going into Chapman's and the traffic going into that abutting or that neighboring residential development. And options like roundabouts and or turning lanes or acceleration lanes will all need to be considered. But at this stage, we're just not quite there yet. I should also note that Chapman's has been clear that this expansion specifically won't do much to change the existing traffic numbers or traffic flows. So it's not like this 90,000 square foot expansion will double the number of trucks on the road. That said, we do want to be cognizant long-term that there could be future expansions, and we know that Markdale is only continuing to grow. So we need to make sure that the traffic movement is both safe and efficient in that regard.
through you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, thank you for that. And I know that currently a lot of that traffic goes down our main street. And I know, I'm sure you're quite aware of that. So at some time, as it keeps expanding, more and more traffic down the main street of, which is a county road basically as well, right? So we know that I just raise that as an issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackey. You're next.
Thanks, Mr. Warden, and thanks for the report, Scott. My question was just answered in regards to the intersection on Highway 10, but I'd just like to congratulate Grey Howlands and West Grey for their efforts in working together, and hopefully that's a template for other growth. There's a good news story for Grey County, more jobs, and hopefully it can be emulated in other parts of the county. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I do not see any other hands. Am I missing anyone? No. Okay, time to call the question. All those in favor of the motion before us? Is there anyone opposed? None being opposed, that is carried. Thank you very much. We're going to turn next to item 5D, which is the Hanover Owen Sound Task Force final report. I guess that puts Randy on deck. Could I get some movers? Councillor Suever, did you want to move it? So moved by Councillor Suever, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, who's the chair of the task force. Randy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning. I think it's still morning. It's getting close. So now I'm the one holding you between now and lunch, so I'll make this quick. But staff thought it would be beneficial to provide an overview of the work that the task force has completed and to provide a high level overview of the reports and work plan that the task force endorsed at their meeting on February 28th. The final report and work plan has been a group effort, and there's a number of county staff that have been involved with respect to this, Hanover Owen Sound staff, as well as a number of community partners that presented on various topics, including United Way, Grey Bruce Poverty Task Force, the Community Drug and Alcohol Strategy, the Canadian Mental Health Association, Grey Bruce Health Services, Fort County Labor Market Planning Board, YMCA Employment Services, Bruce Grey Child and Family Services, and Bruce Grey Council on Aging. So a number of community partners came forward and provided some really good information, background information on some key topics, which I'll explain a little bit, and also just some opportunities that can be explored further that will not only benefit Owen Sound and Hanover, but all local municipalities throughout Grey County. So the Hanover Owen Sound Task Force was established by Council to examine the challenges that Hanover Owen Sound experience and to identify opportunities to address those challenges. Owen Sound and Hanover represent the two largest settlement areas in the county in both terms of size and population. And therefore, the overall health of these communities is important to the overall health of the county. The guiding terms of reference for the task force were to assess available social and economic data for Hanover and Owen Sound, including trend analysis and forecasting, as well as to develop a report, including recommendations and a work plan for Council's consideration to address opportunities in areas of concern for the benefit of both Owen Sound and Hanover, but for the county as a whole. And I'll explain that in a little bit as well. As noted earlier, the Hanover Owen Sound Task Force heard presentations from a variety of community partner organizations, as well as county and municipal staff on a number of themes topics, including housing, poverty and community safety and well-being, mental health and addictions, social services, labor employment, youth and senior supports, policing, planning and development, and community transportation. Data and information regarding each of these themes were provided to the task force to understand the current situation and to explore potential opportunities to address those challenges. Throughout the presentations, it became quite apparent that many of the challenges within each of the themes were interconnected and that a multi-pronged approach will be required to address them. There was also a strong correlation with many of the themes related to the social determinants of health. And social determinants of health are non-medical factors that influence health outcomes. And as you can see on the screen there, that includes everything from hunger, access to care, housing, mental health, transportation, education, isolation, and income and jobs, as well as environment and safety. Many of the challenges that were discussed with the task force are not unique to Hanover and Owen Sound, as similar challenges are also being experienced by other municipalities throughout Grey County to varying degrees, and some are more concentrated and deeply felt in Owen Sound and Hanover. Many of the opportunities identified through discussions and highlighting the work plan to this report, again, will not only benefit Hanover and Sound, but will also benefit the county as a whole. In fact, the task force and staff took great care in ensuring that the actions identified in the work plan will not only benefit Hanover and Sound, but will also benefit all local municipalities throughout the county. A number of challenges and opportunities also align with what we heard through the community consultations as part of Recolor Grey being the county's official plan. Therefore, the continued implementation of the policies within Recolor Grey will go a long way to addressing some of the challenges discussed with the task force. There have been several changes and new initiatives that had started already since we had the initial discussions with the task force. And those have been highlighted in the report and have been reflected in the work plans and action items. Some of the opportunities identified through the discussions have already commenced through various initiatives or projects, and some of the challenges have changed or have been exacerbated by various pressures, including the impacts resulting from the pandemic, continuing rise of housing prices, the rise of inflation, and increased labor shortage. So this just gives you a framework of the final report. It provides some background information about the various challenges and opportunities. It gives a high-level review of each of the meetings that were held with the task force and the highlights of those main discussion points from those meetings. It includes data summary and key findings. It identifies next steps and some of the key stakeholders that would be involved in some of those next steps, and defines a proposed work plan, including whether it's a role for the county or the local municipalities or community partners in terms of taking the lead or being involved in the various actions. The work plan, and I won't go through it in detail, but there's 64 actions identified in the work plan. And that's starting at page 97 of the report. The action or the work plan identifies various opportunities and actions under each theme to address the challenges that were discussed with the task force. It identifies the lead agency or department for each action opportunity. It also identifies, as I mentioned, some of the key partners that would be involved with respect to those actions. It also identifies suggested next steps based on the current status of some of those opportunities. It also identifies the method and timeframe for completing each action, and identifies performance measurements to track progress on whether or not those actions are being completed or not. So in terms of next steps, council, if they adopt the minutes approving the report and work plan today, what staff are planning to do is developing what we call a prioritization work plan based on common alignment with a number of plans and strategies that have been created over the last couple of years. So we just listed a few of those, including Recolor Grey. There will be this Hanover and Sound Task Force work plan. There's a community safety and well-being plan, the age-friendly action plan that was presented last month to council, the climate change action plan, which will be coming very soon, as well as the housing action plan. All these different plans and strategies have a number of actions that we've identified, and there's definitely common alignment with some of those various plans and strategies. So we want to come back to council with, here's where that common alignment is, and that will help to prioritize some key actions that, again, will benefit the entire county in terms of addressing some of those challenges that each of our communities are experiencing. So with that, that's just an overview of the report and work plan that we thought would be beneficial, just because there is a lot of information in that report and work plan. If you haven't had a chance to review it, I'd suggest doing so, because it does provide some really good information. And as I mentioned, a number of the challenges that are identified specifically in Hanover and Sound are being experienced by all communities throughout Grey County. So it's good data and information to have collectively as we move forward with trying to address some of those challenges. And with that, I'd happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for that overview, Randy. Councillor Soever.
Yes, and this is a very substantial report, and that is the reason I pulled it from the consent agenda. Certainly, the consent agenda is there for things that are routine, but this is, you know, a plan going forward for many years. And as Randy said, there are 64 different action plan items in 9 different categories. So the concern I have is that the council's terms of reference refers to the financial impact of this work plan as well. It says suggestions, ideas, projects the county could undertake to promote the health and economic prosperity of the 2 communities to continue to benefit Grey County in all aspects. And then 2 is considerations related to the above, related to financial, time frame, and priorities. And the one thing that I noticed was missing here is the financial impact of these 64 recommendations. I have no idea whether it's $1 million, $2 million, $10 million over the life of the project. Now, that being said, I do note that a lot of these initiatives that are recommended, you know, they're very worthy initiatives, and the task force did a lot of good work here. But, you know, these are worthy initiatives, but I'd still like to know what they're going to cost before we move down a path of addressing them, and certainly prioritizing them. If there isn't one initiative that absorbs a huge amount of budget and we have to sacrifice the other 63, then, you know, certainly I wouldn't be in favor of endorsing that. I would say that, you know, looking at all the different topics, one does stand out, however, is policing. Policing is not a county matter. It's a lower tier matter. Some lower tiers have their own police force. Some are serviced by the OPP. But, you know, I just think that we should stick to what our mandate is. The other, all the recommendations look great. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in here and a lot of good work being done. But, you know, we do need, I think, you know, I was very concerned that we would be endorsing this through the consent agenda without getting a presentation like we just got from Randy. And certainly, you know, it deserves at least that. And, you know, but I would say I can endorse this in principle, but before I support the work plan, I would want to see the financial impacts of the various actions. And that's all I have.
Randy? Oh.
Okay, through you, Mr. Warden, to Councillor Soever. From a staff perspective, our plan, as Randy indicated, is to now take a step back. We have a number of strategies, task force reports, and pieces of work that have, in lots of cases, many things in common. We want to be able to pull together those like recommendations, group them, prioritize them, and really present that back to you as a work plan. And then, as with all work plans going forward, that would then be considered as part of the annual budget. So I think it's at this point, until we take that step back and look where different initiatives fall, you're well aware that we have committed resources to affordable housing, et cetera. So I think we just need to really look at all the different pieces, pull them together that way, and come back with something that I think then we can step through over time.
Councillor Sweber?
So thank you. So in the motion where it says supported, that doesn't mean we're endorsing spending on these initiatives at this time?
Randy?
No, as Kim indicated, is the next step would be to look at all the various plans and strategies and come back to council with that prioritized work plan on the various actions, not only identified in this work plan, but all the other ones that we've listed. And I'm sure I missed some in that list too, because there has been a significant amount of work in the last 2 to 3 years in terms of trying to work on and address some of the challenges that have been discussed through the various task force. And we know there'll be some other stuff that comes out of the mental health and addictions task force and some other groups as well. So that's the kind of next step, is to, like Kim said, bring that information back to council. So we have, so you have that information and then can start working our way at that through annual budgets. A lot of the, as I just, looking at the work plan, a lot of these, as mentioned, I think are already underway. So I think it'd just be potentially enhancing some of those various actions. And we can clearly identify what has already been underway, or in some cases have already been completed through the various projects and initiatives through our paramedic services or through our housing department. Some of those are either underway or being completed as we speak. So, so it's information that we'll bring back to council. And we'll no doubt identify some of that. What are the financial implications of moving forward with those prioritized actions as a next step?
Thank you, Randy. Next is Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. I very much appreciated this report and the synergy that's involved in all of the aspects of that goes with running a city and a town with respect to Owen Sound and Hanover. Where I would be most interested, if I could please refresh my memory on how many primary settlements we do have in Grey County, and following that, how this strategy, as important as it is, and it will be connected with the other strategies of Grey County, but how this will also link with our other Grey County communities that have primary and secondary settlements. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that question. And off the top of my head, I think there's around 9 or 10 primary settlement areas in identified in the county's official plan. But I can get back to you, Councillor Robinson, with respect to that. But it's there definitely is. So obviously the Meaford, Thornbury, Markdale, Durham, Neustadt, Hope, Dundalk. And I know I'm missing some in terms of primary settlement areas as well. So I think it's around 8 or 9 maybe in terms of the identified in the official plan. In terms of some of the actions, I think, as I mentioned, a lot of these actions are linked to social determinants of health, and we know that a number of the challenges that were discussed with this task force are being experienced through various communities throughout Grey County. So with respect to that, I think it's as we move forward with some of these actions that are identified in this plan and looking at the other actions within Recolor Grey, as noted, there's clear alignment with a lot of these actions in Recolor Grey in the official plan policy. So to me, the benefit would be that by exploring these actions, it benefits the entire county, including all the various settlement areas and secondary settlement areas throughout Grey County.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Robinson?
I appreciate the response. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Bordignon.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. Just in this report, as we all know, housing is becoming more and more important. You know, I think it's on page 19 or 20 when it talks about housing through Hempson, reporting that apartments are classified. and I know, I can't speak for the other municipalities as much, but in the town of the Blue Mountains, when we look at, 270 apartments growing to almost 900 apartments over the next 20 years, 25 years, that's really a misnomer, because those are not rental as we know, those are not rental apartments. I think we just need to start breaking out classification of condo and apartment, because these are mostly ski season in our area, secondary residences for people for more of either secondary residence or tourism purposes, not adding to the rental stock of apartments. So I think by having single row and apartment, I think we really need to almost have when we go forward on this, whether it's through this report or other reports, look at condos versus apartments and primary use, because this is, in one way, it looks like we're adding apartments that could be used for rental purposes, when in essence we know that they're not. So I think that's a very important detail that we need to sort of dial down on a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do not see any other hands, so perhaps it's time for us to call the question. But before I do, one of the things that we're going to be voting on is to dissolve the task force. I want to thank Councillor O'Leary for chairing the task force, and perhaps turn it over to him if you want to say any remarks or to say thanks to the other members of the task force.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I did want to comment maybe on the police side of things. I know that court security is paid through our police budget, but it's not necessarily a police thing as compared to other municipalities and what they have to pay for policing. So that part of it is a little bit different. Second thing is, I just want to thank Randy. Boy, this is there's been so many stakeholders in this entire process and so much work, and really appreciate everything you did, and staff. Kim, thanks so much.
Well said, and ditto. Okay, time to call the question. All those in favor of the motion before us? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. So we are on to item number 7 now, other business. Is there any other business? Councillor Soever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. I'd just like to bring to council's attention correspondence that we received, and I assume other municipalities have received too, about proposed legislative amendments to the Building Broadband Faster Act 2021, and that are included in the Getting Ontario Connected Act 2022. Now, this act proposes some very onerous responsibilities on municipalities. The proposed legislative amendments would require municipalities to meet timelines to respond to right-of-way permit applications. Municipalities would respond to permit applications using the Broadband One Window, a digital platform for permit applications they receive through the BOW, the Broadband One Window. The proposed timelines are 10 business days to respond to right-of-way permits by proponents with projects totaling up to 30 kilometers, and 15 business days for proponents with projects totaling 30 kilometers or more. So this would affect not only us at the county, but also the local municipalities. And they would require utility infrastructure owners to share with the ministry within 15 business days data in the requested format regarding infrastructure within 10 meters of a designated broadband project. And that would affect every municipality in Ontario. So for those of us with sewer and water pipes and things like that, and with broadband providers asking to put conduit in roadways, that is pretty short timeline. They're asking for comments until April 7th. And then there's also a proposal for administrative monetary penalties for people who don't comply with the regulations. So that is also part of that ACIP program. They're trying to fast track those projects. Interestingly, although they want to correspond with municipalities this way. I was advised just yesterday by a person that was a proponent bidding on block 51, which includes the Blue Mountains, that the auction had happened and they had been advised by letter that they were not the successful proponent. So over the last 2 days, we've been trying to find out who the successful proponent is. We're supposed to give them access to our roads, the Building Broadband Faster Act and this new legislation don't give us a lot of flexibility on, basically if a person has to have access to the right of way, they get it. So I would have thought that to facilitate the relationship, as soon as the block was awarded, that we would have been advised who the successful bidder was, so we could start that communication. But unfortunately, we have been so far unable to find out who the successful proponent is. In fact, the Ministry of Infrastructure has told us this morning, just before the council meeting, that the auction has not been completed, but yet a proponent has received a letter from Infrastructure Ontario to say they were not successful. So that would seem to indicate that it has. So it's an interesting saga. And I'm just wondering if anybody else around the table had been advised that there was a successful proponent and who they are.
To Mr. Warden, well, I don't have any information about successful proponents. One thing I would draw your attention to is the information that Councillor Soever has discussed and has been posted on the regulatory registry for comment. It does ask municipalities to identify any requirements that they might have in order to be able to meet these requirements. So I think that we got this yesterday, as well as correspondence from Barry Field at Swift, who outlined some key points that he thought people should be aware of. I will be I gave it to transportation yesterday here. I'll give it to the CAOs of your municipalities today to have a look at. But that is one thing that I I think would be important if your staff have concerns about their ability to turn around these timelines or the availability of the kind of detailed asset information that they require. It would be good to flag that right now while the opportunity is there. So thanks.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just want to take this opportunity to remind members of council that there is the AMO Watch file communication that is circulated frequently, and also draw attention to the various courses or sessions that are being offered through AMO. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Anything else on this subject? I do know that there's been some discussion at Swift, and I can tell you that a number of Western Ontario wardens have chimed in on this. I think you can stay tuned. There'll be more on this for sure. Okay, is there any other business? Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. Recently, I read an article in Collingwood Today regarding a notice of motion that was discussed at the town of Blue Mountains. The direction that came out of it was effectively for staff to look at a regional government, which included the municipalities of Meaford and Grey Highlands, at least for now, among other municipalities. I have three questions regarding this. My first question is to Councillor Klumpus. Has she been approached as the head of council at Meaford with any questions around this? My second question is to Councillor Soever, if he has reached out, or if the town of Blue Mountains Council has reached out to any of the other councils that they're looking at. And I'll save my third question for later.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Warden, and thank you for the question. Cash, we have not been apprised of this action going forward at all. In fact, was quite disturbed when I read the article myself with the perception that we were included in this and that we did, we're not only aware of it, but acquiesce to this movement going forward. I think that is damaging to not only our relationship in county council, but also to our individual residents who might look at this and say, where did this come from? So I'm, yes, disturbed about this for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment from Town of Blue Mountain? Councillor Soever. So you need to turn your mic on, okay?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Warden. And certainly this was a notice of motion brought by Councillor Sampson, which was his right to bring that. The motion was aimed at looking at the financial impact to the community. Many of our ratepayers are extremely concerned that there is not enough money left to deal with local concerns, and that the service delivery, we can't have many of the rec centers and things like that that other surrounding municipalities have, because per household and even per $10,000 of median household income, we're paying far more taxes to Grey County and the school board, about 50% more per $10,000 of household income, even weighted for income. So we're paying about 55%, I think it is, more taxes to the other levels of government. So we're only left with 40 cents on the dollar. And we do have one of the highest tax burdens in total, not quite as high as Owen Sounds, but Owen Sound retains 70% of its tax dollars at the town level. We retain 40%. So the aim of Councillor Sampson's motion was to have staff look at, is this a function of the structure we're in right now? And what if there was an alternate structure? What impact it would have on our taxpayers? So this is strictly looking at the finances, and we want to see, whether there is, and that's the motion was carried, and so staff will be putting together a financial model. That does not mean that we're proposing that governance structure. It's merely to assess the financial impact such a structure would have on our taxpayers.
Thank you, Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. My third concern is directly related to the notice of motion. I looked up the video for the debate after to get more context around this, and I was a little concerned with the language and the decorum that I observed. In particular, Councillor Sampson at the Town of Blue Mountains said, who at the county needs to be knocked up the side of the head to wake up and see this? The head of council at Town of Blue Mountains did not call Councillor Sampson out of order. I think it is absolutely dangerous to allow such language to occur at any council, lower tier or upper tier. I think it would be appropriate for me, Warden Hicks, to ask that the head of council for Town of Blue Mountains issue an apology to this council for what was said at the Town of Blue Mountains Council. Thank you, Warden Hicks.
Certainly, I don't recall that. I will review the video and I will report back.
Okay, Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. And my final question with regards to this is the Town of Blue Mountains planning on sending this motion to the county as correspondence for debate at this table? Thank you.
I can't recall if that was part of the motion, but I will verify, and I'd be happy to have that sent here as correspondence.
Okay. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I too watched that video, and one of the things that Councillor Sampson said was the county is penalizing your municipality. They think they can throw us a couple of roundabouts and think everything is going to be good. The $1,139,000 that you received in February of 2021, what did that mean to the town of Blue Mountains?
Well, we very much appreciate that. And that was money that was paid by our taxpayers to the county, but we appreciate the county sending that back. That was a consequence of us finding all the assessment. We had been puttering along as much of the county, only capturing about 65% of the value of our building permits in any year in subsequent years. And we were able to get 272%, I think it was, in 2019, which resulted in a windfall of 1.1 million, which, came from our taxpayers and that missing assessment that we located. And we very much appreciate the county sending that back to us for attainable housing.
Okay, I do not see any other hands. So once again, is there any other business? Seeing none. Item number 8, is there any notices of motion? Okay, then on to adjournment. We're looking for motion to adjourn. Councillor Milne, seconded by Councillor Gamble. Gotcha. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much.